I've never heard a straight answer to that, and I don't think that I have one either. My call started many years ago when my wife, who had been a choir director, both of us are music majors, and she became a church choir director as a side job along with being a teacher, like I am, in the Moravian church, and I became pretty close with our pastor. After working with him and seeing a different way that Christianity can be seen from a little bit more the fundamental side that many churches in many places, but especially in the South, can be, I felt a call to do something with the church. And it didn't quite work out. So that was God saying, no, the Moravian church isn't quite what you want. Fast forward a few years, and my youngest child and I were basically the youth group at the Moravian church that my wife was serving at. And I, being a cradle Episcopalian, was jonesing for some communion. So we went to my home parish, or what became my home parish here in Kernersville, St. Matthews. And the next thing I know, I've joined it. I've started serving at the altar like I did as a child, as an acolyte, and then as an LEM. And the call just happened. What God does, God did. And God said, this is it. And I said, okay, show me what to do. And the next thing I know, 3 years later after, or about 4 years later after that, including several meetings with you as our archdeacon, I was ordained into the diaconate. The diaconate has, I don't want to use the word freedom, but I guess would be a little bit more ability to explore. I'm a graduate of UNCG, and I still have connections with faculty, staff, and even the students at UNCG. Some of my former students went through there, and some of my former professors are still there, so I already had that connection. The students in college, at least through my experience, are looking, if they're looking for something more spiritual, they're not looking for, let's say, yay God for an hour every week and go home. They want to be part of something that makes a difference in their world, be it through environmental justice, be it through social justice, be it through a whole host of different things to make this world a little bit more like the kingdom. That's what they're looking for. And having the connections that I've had, and having the ability to explore and find new ways to connect with the youth, that's where I found my place. It might be having coffee at the Starbucks on campus with some of the students. It might be hosting and running a Dungeons and Dragons game that we do every Thursday night, to give different opportunities for students to not only explore, but also to explore what it means to be a child of God, but also the opportunity to explore what it means just to be a person, and to have those chances to have fun with people, and understand that the church doesn't have to be what we're led to believe, but the church is what God is calling us to make it, and to give the opportunity to be part of that, to let them grow and let them do that, and give them opportunities and to facilitate that. And I think that as a deacon, that's what I've been able to do. After 20 years of teaching middle and high school, and actually 6 months before I was ordained, I went to elementary school. And I teach general music for kindergarten through second grade, and for third through fifth grade, I teach band. So I teach band instruments to the little kids, and I sing and dance and play with the little kids in the morning, and at night I go to UNCG and I play with the older kids. God calls us to be artists in our own way. And that might be something as simple as being an audience participant or a supporter of the arts. It might be someone going to a museum. It might be someone going to a concert. It might be someone who's actually doing the painting for the galleries. It might be the musician on the stage. Nothing can be more godly than showing our love of creativity through that artistry. What I do as a music teacher is to help facilitate those ideas and those abilities to explore art and the love of art and the love of creation of art to become something bigger. And even though I do work in a public school, I don't necessarily keep my collar on during school. That would probably create more problems than it's worth. But that doesn't mean that when I take the collar off, I stop being a deacon. My life call is to be a servant, and I just happen to be a servant without the collar on during the day. Being a deacon is a set of vows. It's a life choice that I've made, and it isn't like you take off a Halloween costume or something like that. It's the way I am, whether I'm wearing the collar or and I'm serving at the altar, or I'm opening doors for students in the morning, or whether or not I'm hugging a kid who's having a bad day, or I'm making sure that a student who can't afford to have food gets fed by either giving them food for their home or make sure that things are taken care of at school as I can. I mean, that's my life as a servant, and God's call for being a servant doesn't end at noon on Sunday after the service. It's one of the things that's really caught my eye and has made me very proud to not only serve the Episcopal Church but also represent the Episcopal Church has to do with the way that we work with justice issues, especially the way that churches, seminaries, and dioceses are starting to look at reparations for those families and those descendants of the enslaved, and looking at it from that perspective, looking for ways. I think that we've worked hard to make connections with people that disagree with us a little bit better than we had in the beginning. I think a lot of that has to do with our leadership. As you know, being the archdeacon for this guy right here has made a big difference in the way that we're led. And I would be remiss to say that Bishop Curry was now presiding Bishop Curry, but back then just Bishop Curry was one of the major reasons why I felt that this was the right call and this is the right decision, because we had phenomenal leadership in our little diocese here in North Carolina when you were here and when I started my discernment process. There have been a lot. One of the connections I had was just recent, one I keep coming back to. It wasn't a life-changing, like we didn't, I wasn't able to change the world, but that's not what we as deacons are here to do. We might, I can't remember if you were the one that originally said this, but we might not be able to pay for the power bill, but we'll sit with you in the dark. And just being with the people in need is something that we as the diaconate really are able to do and make a difference with. Is that I might not be able to solve your problems, but I won't leave you alone. I'll be here while you go through these situations, and I'll be here to support you as best I can. We had, the day before Christmas, one of my students' older brothers had died by gunshot due to some gang issues here in Winston-Salem. And I shouldn't say just one of my students, 3 of my students. It was their older brother. Their older brother, who was 19, has a child who will be at my school as a pre-kindergartner next year. I took that time to work with my assistant principal, and she and I worked to get some support for her and for their family, both the widow and the parents and the siblings. But the important thing wasn't that we were able to get things for them. It was the important thing was that we were able to talk with them, to share with them that they weren't alone in this. I remember that there was a lot of anger, frustration. He too being a member of a gang, there were some members out there watching out, and to be there and to help make a difference, to let them know that there can be some peace here eventually when things are able to work out, but to be able to support some students that to this day don't fully comprehend, though they saw this situation happen, to be able to be with them and to help them as they might need to be helped. It might be for food, it might be paying for the food, paying for the things that the older sibling helped to support financially, or even just to sit and be when one of the younger students is having a rough day, and it might be connected to that. To be able to support them in that way has been a true blessing. I think the first most important thing that we can do is make sure that all of the orders are speaking about our order. Our order is the quietest. Our order is the least visible, because there are so few of us. We're the Episcopal Church, so we're going to see the bishop. We are the bishop's church. We're going to see priests, because priests are the ones that are always up there on Sunday, even though priests are also deacons. But when we speak of the permanent diaconate, there just aren't that many of us, and so it's hard. It's hard for us to be, I don't want to say forgotten, but maybe overlooked. I think that discussions should be regular. I think that priests that might see something in a parishioner that might be able to be organically grown into a member of our order eventually, if that's where God's calling them. I think those things should be prominent. There is sometimes a fear that a priest doesn't want that to happen, because if you're in a small parish and you've got 2 or 3 people, one goes to diaconate, now you got 2, so you might lose that. And I think that the church needs to rethink those situations. What happens to the deacons when they are ordained? In some dioceses, you don't go back to your home parish. Some like in North Carolina, that's becoming a little bit more of a possibility. That maybe rethinking what it means to be a deacon might be important, as not necessarily on what it means to be a deacon as a God's servant, but how the diocese facilitates that growth, how they facilitate the opportunities that might manifest, because there is a comfort in knowing that you're going to the church that you spent 25 years at, and now you have a different job. That doesn't mean that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it might be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should shoo it away. Rethinking what the diaconate is within the church, outside of the liturgy, of course, and having regular, open, frank discussions of the opportunities that might be there, and to make sure that they know that the diocese will be there to support them in this process, that they won't be alone, that they don't have to go to seminary, that it's a different way towards service for God. When you're a rector, even though you are playing the part of said deacon as well, you're sort of wearing 2 different suits there. Being the priest almost always comes first, because being the priest, I mean, that's where your vows are, and it's hard to remember that the servanthood side, in that regard, that our vows call us to do, can be superseded from the day-to-day issues. So I can appreciate the fact that it's a challenge to see that.
If you think of the church as a circle, the priest is the person in the circle. The priest is the one gathering the community for teaching, gathering the community for the sacraments. But the deacon is constantly breaking that circle. He's coming into the circle with the needs of the world, and going out from the circle with the people, with the resources, and with the prayers of the church into the community. So I think that's pretty much what you said.
Absolutely. And the other thing that the deacon's doing while going in that circle is breaking that circle and making sure people are not comfortable being in little circles all the time, that the circle needs to change in the process to make sure that the people outside of the circle are not only welcome but taken care of. If you are interested in becoming a deacon, get in touch with one. The Association for Episcopal Deacons is here for that, in part, not only to support the deacons, but to support the order itself. There are deacons nearby. Talk to your priest. See if God's calling you for this. God very well might not, but God very well might as well. And until we pray about it, we consider it, and we meditate on what God's calling us to do, and we listen to God, we'll never quite know. But I think that there is a level of diaconate in all of us, no matter what God may be to you, and no matter what your relationship with God may be. So entertain it. Is it easy? No. Is it fulfilling? Almost always. And it's definitely worth looking into. But we're here for you. Even if it's not what you're here for, that's why we're here. We're here servants of God's children, and we'll be here for you when you need us.